It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 28, looking at the groups and teams of the 2024 Copa America. This episode is looking at the players of Brazil. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is Series 28 on the players of the 2024 Copa America. This episode covers Brazil's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors to categorize them into definite, likely, possible, and so on. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad is selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three sections. In section one, we're going to look at some general information on the team. Section two is the main part where we cover the candidates in each position and their likelihood of making it, as well as giving some biographical information there. And in section three, we summarize and have some concluding business. All right, let's begin then. Section one. We're going to start with retirements. So we do have a couple of retirements. Really, I should name this kind of notable absences, because we're not sure if some of these players are retired. We're pretty sure that our first one, Thiago Silva, is retired from the national team, at least. And he was captain of the team for a good part of his career, or mostly at the end there, and had 113 caps and 7 goals in his career, which covered from 2008 to 2022. So he was part of World Cup squad since 2010, the 2010 World Cup, and mostly a starter there. And all tournaments really except the 2016 Copa America Centenario, where he was out of favor with the manager Dunga at that time. But he was captain of the team for the 2022 World Cup and a starter in that competition, and that was his last appearance for the national team. So Thiago Silva off the team. The next one is Dani Alves. He had a career spanning even longer than Thiago Silva. He was from 2006 to 2022, and he earned 126 caps and 8 goals. And I have him here that he was the captain of the team. That was for a short period for the 2019 Copa America. Dani Alves was part of teams from way back in the 2007 Copa America. Wow. And was part of every tournament except the 2018 World Cup, for which he was injured. By the time the World Cup in 2022 rolled around, he was just a bench player. He started only game 3 there. And actually, I see that he had also missed the 2021 Copa America as well. But Dani Alves, also the World Cup 2022 was his last appearance for the national team. The next player is not necessarily retired or even off the team, but he's been gone also since the 2022 World Cup, and that is left back Alex Sandro. And he's been part of teams, well, on the team since 2011, but his first tournament was the 2019 Copa America. There, he's been part of the team for the last 3 tournaments, and as I said, has not appeared since the World Cup. So those 3 names, big names missing. And next we have club affiliation. So I don't have the title on my graphic there for some reason, but we'll take a quick look at it without going into too much details, especially for Brazil, because really it's just a litany of top clubs in the world, mostly in Europe. So I won't actually go into the teams and the individual players. I'll just say that most of the first team players, the aim generally in Brazil is to get on one of the top teams in Brazil, and then move to Europe, usually with the top team or a secondary team. So we have a few of their starting players playing in Brazil with some of the top teams there: Atlético Mineiro, Sao Paulo, and Atlético Paranense. And there are others, Flamengo too. But most of the, especially the A team or the starting team for Brazil, has moved over to Europe and are with top clubs there, like Paris Saint-Germain, Real Madrid, Liverpool, and so on. Some of them are with secondary teams like West Ham in England, or Girona in England also, but most of them are really with top clubs. It's kind of true. I would say about half of the secondary, we'll call them bench players, sometimes even players who don't make the squad, already over in Europe, again playing for top teams. And the only representation other than Europe and top Brazilian teams are in Saudi Arabia. We have a few players playing in Saudi Arabia, especially Neymar, now playing for Al Ali. Sorry, not Al Ali, for Al Hilal. And we do have a player actually for Al Ali in Saudi Arabia as well. So that's a bit of a special case there, that club. Anyway, that is our club affiliations, so top affiliations for Brazil there. Let's take a look at their recent games, and we're thinking in terms of the players here. So kind of our analysis of formations and players in those formations will begin from the World Cup in December 2022 and in the games after that. So Brazil have played 13 games over that period, and I'll go over those games. The first one after the World Cup is really more kind of an experimental friendly. They did use some of their players, some of their 18 players, but then some players who really just appeared in that game and not else. So I don't really want to kind of dwell on the players for that game. It was a friendly against Morocco in March of 2023. They had two friendlies after that in June of 2023, and then World Cup qualification began for September, October, November, 2 games in each of those months. And then finally we have 2 games in March. So in all, 11 games, and in terms of player participation, we'll talk about those 11 games, how many they've played, and mostly our decision as to how likely they are to make the team is based on that. As far as international competitions go, Brazil has been involved in every regional one. It's automatic qualification for the Copa America, and also every World Cup since. So Brazil participating in all major tournaments. But we're really not going to go back too far. We did in the 2022 World Cup player preview of Brazil, and we went back a little further than we're going to go today in the club history of each player. But we're going to keep it to the last 2 tournaments and the last 2 clubs they've played for as a general rule. Okay, so we move on to the next section, which is I put my graphic in the wrong place there. Formations over the period. So again, we're looking at the World Cup and then forward from there. But we'll also look at the managers when we talk about this, because we're talking about games under 4 different managers. So first of all, we have the 5 World Cup games under manager Tite. And then we have a new interim manager for the single March 2023 and June 2023 friendlies, 2 June friendlies, so 3 games in all. And then we have a new manager for the World Cup qualification games in the fall of 2023. And then the manager who's taking them through this cup came in for the friendlies in March 2024. So we will keep in mind, especially who is lining up under the new manager. But in terms of formations, it's fairly straightforward for Brazil. They use a 4-2-3-1 about 56% of the time. So just over half the games is a 4-2-3-1 formation, 9 of their 16 games. In 6 of their 16 games, it was a 4-3-3 formation. And those were under the first interim manager and under the new manager only. And then one time we have a 4-4-2 formation. That was the first game in November of 2023, and a bit of a disaster, I must say, but only one time, so we don't really need to pay attention to it that much. So I would say for Brazil, keep in mind the 4-2-3-1 formation for the most part. I'll point out anything that necessitates knowing that it was a 4-3-3 formation. I think the important detail here is that they always have 4 at the back, so it's always going to be 2 central defenders and a left winger and a right winger. Okay, the last part of this section is a look at the upcoming games, so the warm-up games for the Cup, and see that I didn't prepare it, so I'm just going to kind of bluff my way through it until I get it prepared. There we go. We have 2 friendlies there, June 8th and June 12th, both of them taking place in the USA. Most teams are kind of having their warm-up games in the USA to prepare for the tournament there. And for Brazil, they'll be playing Mexico on June 8th and USA on June 12th. 2 warm-up games for them. And we move on to section 2, the main part here where we look at the candidates. So let's begin with the manager, and the current manager is Junior Dorival Jr., and he effectively replaces Tite, although there were 2 interim managers in between, and we'll get to that in the summary. But let me introduce Dorival Jr. here. He played professionally from 1982 to 1998, but had no caps for the national team. Became manager of Brazil in 2024, and just a huge list of Brazilian teams that he has managed. Only Brazilian teams, some of them 2 or even 3 times. He's managed Flamengo 3 times, and yes, especially in recent times, they are the top teams in the country: Sao Paulo, Atlético Paranaense, and so on. His management of those Brazilian teams began in 2005. In 2000. So from 2000 until 2024, managed probably about 15 or more teams there, and then became Brazilian manager, as we saw. So let's look at a summary of the position over the last few years. Tite was the manager from 2016. In February 2022, he announced that he would step down as manager after the World Cup at the end of the year. So he gave about a year advance notice that he would step down, and he did so on December 9th, 2023, after Brazil lost in the quarterfinals. Despite the advance notice, Brazil had 2 caretaker managers before finding their new one. The second caretaker manager, Fernando Diniz, might have taken them through the Copa America. He was actually given a 1-year contract in July of 2023. But when he lost his last 3 World Cup qualifiers in October and November 2023, he was fired on January 5th. And Dorival was appointed on January 10th, 2024. So he only had the March games to work with the team, and then these warm-up games that we just talked about in June. And it'll be interesting to see what changes he made, and we will talk about that as we go through. So Dorival Jr. leading them through this cup, And let's begin looking at candidates, beginning with goalkeepers. No definite candidate there, actually, but we have a likely candidate in Alisson, or Alisson Becker, and a likely candidate, or he would be likely, in Ederson, except Ederson is an injury doubt going into this tournament. We'll talk more about that later. We have a third likely candidate in Bento, and you'll see if you're looking at the graphics that his name is in light grey. That indicates that he has no tournament experience, nor do any of the three possible candidates that I'm about to list. The first one is Lucas Perry, the second one Leo Jardim, and the third one Raphael. And then we have one player seemingly off the squad, Weverton. So let's go back and look in more detail, especially at the more likely players. So Alisson, or Alisson Becker, is 31 years old, and he has 63 caps since 2015 with the national team. He plays for Liverpool in England since 2018, and Roma before that. Internacional was his Brazilian team and youth club. Alisson Becker has been part of tournaments since the Copa America Centenario in 2016, and he's been the starter in all of those tournaments there. And recently, excuse me, I just have to cough. Okay, recently he's only started 2 of their 11 games since the 2022 World Cup. He was on the bench for 6 games and injured for the last 2, though he has recovered from that injury, and not selected for the first match, that kind of experimental friendly with Morocco. So Alisson Becker, the starter, but now it's in a bit of doubt, having started only 2 of their 11 games. Next, we have Ederson. He's 30 years old with 25 caps since 2017, and he has been, or he plays for Manchester City in England since 2017, and was with Benfica actually more than once before that, with the Benfica Youth Club as well. He moved over from Sao Paulo Youth Club in Brazil. He was injured actually for the 2016 Copa America Centenario, and was on all of the squads since then. So from the 2018 World Cup onwards, but always back up to Alisson there. However, since the World Cup in 2022, he has started 6 of their 11 games. He was on the bench for 1, and then was out for 2 with 2 separate injuries for the last 4, as well as not being selected for 2. So we can only put him as a likely candidate here. Well, he, as I say, he would be a likely candidate. He is actually out with a fractured eyebrow now. That injury made him unable to start the last game of the club season, and he has an unknown return date on him. So actually not looking very good for Ederson here. Okay, let's move on to the next candidate, Bento. He is 25 years old and has 2 caps for the national team since 2024, so brand new. He plays for Atlético Paranaense in Brazil since 2020, was with their youth team before that. Bento got his first appearance actually in November 2023. He was on the bench there, but he started the 2 games in March of 2024, having been on the bench for the 2 November games. So Bento making a bid and benefiting, it would seem, from the injury of Ederson there. Let's look at the 3 possible candidates. Lucas Perry is 26 years old with no caps for the national team. He plays for Lyon in France and got his first appearance in September 2023, and didn't start any games, but was on the bench for 6, but not selected under the new manager for the last 2. So I should have put him a bit lower in the list. I'll change that up soon. Next is Leo Jardim. He's 29 years old, also no caps for the national team, and plays for Vasco da Gama in Brazil. And he got his first appearance just recently on the bench in March 2024, and was just on the bench for both of those. So Leo Jardim making a late bid here. And finally, Rafael is 35 years old with no caps for the national team. He plays for Sao Paulo in Brazil and Atletico Mineiro before that. And he also got his first appearance on the bench in March 2024, but didn't get on the field, just like Leo Jardim. So 3 new keepers to look at, but I'm actually going to put Lucas Perry down at the bottom now because he was not there for the March games, whereas Jardim and Rafael were. Finally, we'll take a quick look at Weverton. 36-year-old Weverton has only 10 caps for the national team, but was a backup keeper in the last 2 tournaments. However, he has not appeared for Brazil since June of 2023, so seems to be off the squad there. Okay, let's look at the summary of the position. So Alisson was a starting keeper in the World Cup. He played 4 of the 5 games there. Keep in mind that Brazil used a B team for game 3 against Cameroon. And Ederson played that game. We're going to skip talking about the March friendly. No, we won't. We'll say Weverton played that game. But Ederson in the June friendlies and in the first 4 games of World Cup qualifying. Alisson then returned and started the last 2 World Cup qualifiers, but he was injured for the March 2024 friendlies, and Bento came in for those games. So it'll be interesting to see whether Alisson will make it back into the squad, or whether the manager is going to do kind of a clean sweep here and kind of start with new keepers, Bento being the most likely there. Okay, on to central defence, and we begin with the definite candidate, Marquinhos. Sorry, no, we have no definite candidates. We just have several likely candidates. Marquinhos is the first of them. The second is Gabriel, plays for Arsenal. Gabriel, or Gabriel Magalhães, is his actual full name. We have Lucas Beraldo also as likely, and Bremer, or Gleason Bremer, as the 4th possible likely candidate. We also have 4 possible candidates: Eder Militao, Fabrizio Bruno, Nino, and Murillo. And then off the squad, seemingly, is Roger Ibanez. And retired is Thiago Silva. Okay, let's look at the candidates. First, a little bit about the position, though. So as we saw in section 1, it's always a 4-man backline for Brazil. So we're always going to have 2 central defenders. And that's all we need to say about that. Let's look at the candidates. Marquinhos is 30 years old now. He has 84 caps for Brazil and 7 goals too. And he is with, and that is since 2013, by the way. And he is with Paris Saint-Germain in France and has been also since 2013. Roma in Italy and Corinthians in Brazil. Before that, he's been part of tournaments since the 2015 Gold Cup. What am I talking about? The 2015 Copa America consistently, and was a starter in the last 2 cups, the Copa America 2021 and the World Cup in 2022. He has since started 8 of their 11 games since the 2022 World Cup. He was injured for the last 2, though, although he has recovered from that, and just 1 game that he wasn't selected for. So Marquinhos looking like a likely candidate once again. Gabriel is 26 years old and has been with Brazil just since 2023. He has just 6 caps and 1 goal for them. He plays for Arsenal in England since 2020 and Lille before that, Lille in France, and has not been part of any tournament, was not selected for the World Cup in 2022 and was actually off the team for 19 months before returning in September 2023. And after that, Gabriel started six of their remaining 8 games. He started all 6 of their World Cup qualifiers in the fall. However, he was not selected under the new manager for the last 2 matches, so a bit surprising there. Next, we have Lucas Beraldo. He's just 20 years old, and he has his 2 caps just in the March games in 2024. He also plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2024, having moved over from Sao Paulo in Brazil. And Beraldo, as we saw, got his first appearance in March 2024 and started both games. So an interesting challenge there to probably to Gabriel, and Marquinhos was injured. Bremer is our 4th likely candidate. He is 27 years old, 4 caps for the national team since 2022, and plays for Juventus in England, in Italy since 2022. Torino before that, and he comes out of Atletico Mineiro, his last youth club. Okay, he was selected, Bremer, for the World Cup in 2022. He started the B team game there and otherwise subbed into 1 game. And Bremer, however, has not started any of their 11 games over this period. However, he was subbed into 1 and on the bench for 6 games, injured for 2 matches and not selected for 2. I should probably put him as a possible there. And I do apologize for saying, however, twice in a row, too close to each other. That's the English teacher in me. Anyway, Bremer, we'll leave him as a likely candidate for now. Now, our 4 possible candidates. Edu Militao is 26 years old with 30 caps and 2 goals since 2018, and he plays for Real Madrid in Spain since 2019. He comes out of the Sao Paulo system there in Brazil and has been part of tournaments since the 2019 Copa America. The only one he was a starter in was the 2021 Copa America. He started but lost his starting position, but the reverse is true in the World Cup. He was on the bench for game 1 and gained a starting position for all 4 remaining games. Since the start of this period, he did start the first 3 of their 11 games since the World Cup, and then he was out for 6 with an injury and still in recovery for the last 2 matches, although he is recovered now. So it'll be interesting to see whether Militao makes it back into the squad. The next 3 candidates are all fairly new to the squad, so I won't go into detail on them. Fabrizio Bruno plays for Fluminense in Brazil and got his first appearance in March 2024 and started both games though, so maybe a name to keep in mind. He's 28 years old. Fabrizio Bruno. Nino is 27 years old and he plays for Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia, having moved over also from Fluminense in Brazil. And he was not selected for the last 2 matches under the new manager, having first appeared in September 2023. So Nino, not as possible as Fabrizio Bruno. Murillo is the last one. He has actually moved back from Russia. He played for Lokomotiv Moscow in Russia from 2019 to 2022 and has moved back and plays for Palmeiras in Brazil. He got his first appearance in March 2024 under the new manager, but was on the bench for both of those games. I'll just say of Roger Ibanez, he did actually play in this period 1 game, but he hasn't been selected for the last 6 matches. So he was on the bench for 3. I think I'll move him up to the possible but unlikely level there because he has played during this period. Okay, anyway, we'll maybe give more details on him if he is selected. Let's go to the summary of the position. So a lot of candidates here, but we are dealing with 2 positions. In the World Cup, it was Marquinhos and Thiago Silva as the central pairing. They played 4 of the 5 games. In the B team game, it was Militao and Bremer as a pair. Marquinhos continued through to the end of World Cup qualifying. We saw that Thiago Silva didn't play after the Cup. And he was replaced only once by Ibanez. Militao was the partner in all three of the friendlies in March 2023, but for the World Cup qualifiers, Gabriel took the position for all 6 games, so the pairing was Gabriel and Marquinhos. However, under the new manager, it completely changed. It was Bruno and Beraldo as the starting pair. But we did see that Marquinhos was injured for those games. So we looked to the warm-up games in June to see if he returns, or as with goalkeepers, whether he's going to go with new players rather than the established players. Okay, up to or over to left back position. And we have no definite or even likely candidates, just possible candidates here in Wendell, Renan Lodi, Carlos Augusto, I don't know what's wrong with my vowels, Augusto, and Ayrton Lucas. Those are the 4 possible candidates, and we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Guillaume Arana. And seemingly off the squad, Alex Telles and Alexandro, we introduced as a retired player, or he's been off the squad for quite a while there. Okay, those are the candidates. Let's look and introduce them. So we have Wendell. He's 30 years old, but he just got his first caps here in 2024. Actually, he did appear on the... no, I'll get to that a bit later. He plays for Porto in Portugal since 2021 and for Bayer Leverkusen for 7 years before that. He came back in... he had first appeared on the bench twice in October 2016, and then was not on the squad and returned after more than 7 years absent in March of 2024 and started both of their games. So that's a bit of an interesting story. So Wendell, maybe the most likely candidate here, but we'll look at the others. Renan Lodi is 26 years old, 19 caps for the national team since 2019. And yeah, he was the player I was looking for, who also plays for Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, as well as Neymar. Before that, he played for Marseille in France and Atletico Madrid in Spain, and he was selected for the 2021 Copa America, but not for the 2022 World Cup. Lodi, though, has come back. He started 3 of their 11 games after the World Cup, was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 6 matches, including the last 2 under the new manager. So Renan Lodi has some work to do there to get into the team. Carlos Augusto, I don't know what is wrong with me. Carlos Augusto. It's actually coded as a left midfielder, but we moved him here because his only 2 stars were in this left back position. Augusto is 25 years old, and those 2 caps since 2023, his only games. He plays for Inter Milan in Italy. That's a new since 2024. He was with Monza in Italy from 2020, although they had loaned him out to Inter Milan. Augusto got his first appearance in October 2023. He started 2 of them 6 games and was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 2 under the new manager. Finally, our final possible candidate is Ayrton Lucas. He's 27 years old, also with 2 caps since 2023, and also is a player who moved back from Russia to Brazil. So he was playing with Spartak Moscow in Russia and moved back to Flamengo in Brazil since 2023. It was 4 years with that Russian team. He got his first appearance in June 2023, Ayrton Lucas, and started the first 2 of the remaining 10 games, was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 6 of the matches. So definitely Wendell with the strongest bid for the position here, but they'll probably pick two, so it'll probably be one of those. It probably won't be Guillaume Arana, our possible but unlikely candidate. He's been around for a while, since 2021, but only has 6 caps for the national team. And over this period, he was not selected for the last 4 matches. So we'll get more details on him if he makes the squad. Alex Telles is seemingly off the squad now. He was selected for the World Cup 2022 squad. That's his only tournament. But perhaps his move from Manchester United in England to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia has affected his kind of cachet. He last appeared for the national team in June of 2023. Okay, and we talked about Alexandro in the introduction, last appearing in the 2022 World Cup. So now we're ready to go back and talk about the position in summary. First of all, in theory, once again, Brazil always uses 4 backs. So we never have the left back and right back pushing up to become wingers for Brazil. Rather, they're always left back and right back, although they do push up, of course, in their play. Okay, summary of the position then. Alexandro played the first 2 games of the World Cup. He then got injured. It was a hip injury, I think, and he was out for the tournament. Alex Telles came in for the B team game, but the player that ultimately covered him was the right back Danilo, playing in this position for the last 2 games. It was quite mixed after that. We do have Alex Telles playing again in that first friendly, which was kind of experimental, but it was Ayrton Lucas playing in the 2 June friendlies. For the World Cup qualifiers, Renan Lodi started the first 2, but then otherwise appeared only in the 5th game. Carlos Augusto started 2 of them and Arana 1 of them. But under the new manager, it was none of these players. It was Wendell getting the start in both of the March 2024 friendlies. So again, be interesting to see what the warm-up squads look like, whether Wendell will hold on to that position. Let's go over to the right side. Here we do have a likely candidate, the player we just mentioned, Danilo. As a likely candidate, we have 2 possible candidates, Emerson Royal and Jan Couto, and then we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Vanderson. We also have a player, oh yes, I did introduce him in the introduction, the retired player Dani Alves there, or yes, he is actually retired from football altogether. Let's take a look at the candidates then. Danilo is 32 years old and he has 56 caps and even 1 goal for the national team. He's been with Brazil since 2011 and is still with Juventus in Italy since 2019. And he has taken a tour of the top clubs with Manchester City, Real Madrid and Porto. He was part of the Copa America. No, he wasn't. He was selected for the Copa America in 2015. That would have been his first tournament, despite being with Brazil since 2011. But he was injured for that, so his first tournament became the World Cup in 2018. And he has participated in all of the cups since except Copa America 2019. He wasn't selected for that one. He was a starter in the 2022 World Cup and he started 7 of their 11 games since then. Was out with 2 separate injuries for 3 matches and then not selected for 1 game. So Danilo still going strong for Brazil. The first of the possible candidates is 25-year-old Emerson Royal, who has 10 caps and no goals for the national team since 2019. And Emerson Royal is with Tottenham in England. He was with Barcelona in Spain before that, and was selected for the 2021 Copa America. He was a substitute in that tournament, but he was not selected for the World Cup in 2022. He returned after a 14-month absence right after the World Cup in March 2023, and he started 3 of their remaining games, was on the bench for 1, but not selected for 7 matches, including the last 2 under the new manager. So on the fringes is Emerson Royal. Jan Couto is a new player for the team, just 22 years old, with 3 caps, and he is on the roster for Manchester City in England since 2020. He's never played for them, though. He was loaned out to Girona in Spain for the 2nd time since 2022, and I think has basically been loaned out his whole time with them. For the national team, Couto got his first appearance in October 2023 and started 1 of the remaining 6 games. He subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 1. But not selected for 2 of those 6 matches. So Jan Couto also kind of on the fringes, perhaps looking a bit more likely than Emerson Royal. Possible but unlikely candidate, though, Vanderson only has 2 caps for the national team since 2023. He was also subbed in for 2 and on. Oh no, those are his 2 caps. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. Vanderson was not selected for the last 4 matches, so possible but unlikely. Okay, those are the candidates, and let's talk about the position. So it was Danilo starting in the World Cup, but in game 2 he was replaced by central defender Eder Militao. I don't know why he wasn't even on the bench for games 2 and 3, Danilo, but we did see Danilo return and play for games 4 and 5 on the left side. He was replaced by Militao for all of those games except game 3, where Dani Alves played the B team game. After the Cup, it was Emerson Royal in the first friendly, but Danilo after that, and he also played the first 3 World Cup qualifying games. However, it was mixed after that. Jan Couto played 1 of the World Cup qualifiers and Emerson Royal the last 2. However, under the new manager, Danilo was restored to the position and played both games in March of 2024. So as we say, Danilo's still going strong. Let's move up to the midfield and look at defensive midfield candidates. We have no definite ones, but we do have Andre as a likely candidate. However, he is an injury risk. We have Casemiro as a possible candidate there. And also possible is Pablo Maya, but he too is an injury doubt. And then we have seemingly off the squad, Fabinho, actually, yes, hasn't played since the 2022 World Cup, Fabinho. So actually, that's all we'll say about him. And we'll come back to him if he is selected. Let's look at Andre. He's 22 years old and has 5 caps for Brazil since 2023, and he plays for Fluminense in Brazil since 2020. That was also his youth club. Andre has got his first appearance right at the beginning of this period in March 2023. He started 2 of their remaining 11 games, as well as subbing in for 3 and being on the bench for 6. However, he was injured for the last 2 matches, so well, we'll see if he comes back under the new manager, or perhaps we won't, because Andre is out with a knee injury since late April and is an unknown return date. So we can update that in part 2. Casemiro is a veteran for the team. He's 32 years old. He's 32 years old, yes, and I thought he was older. He has 75 caps for the national team and 7 goals since 2011. Has been part of every tournament, but I'm not going to go into detail on tournaments. Casemiro plays for Manchester United in England since 2022 and Real Madrid for a long time before that. He was a starter in the Copa America 2021 and in the 22 World Cup and in several tournaments before those. In the recent period, Casemiro has started 6 of their 11 games. He was on the bench for 1 and injured for 2, but not selected for the last 2 matches under the new manager, so hasn't appeared for the last 4 games. Casemiro, he does seem to be drifting off the squad a little bit, and he is just a possible candidate here. Pablo Maya is a new player, 22 years old, and just 1 cap since 2024, and plays for Sao Paulo in Brazil since 2022. He was with their youth club too. Pablo Maya got his first appearance in March 2024. He didn't start either of the new games under the new manager, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for the other. However, Pablo Maya is out with a muscle injury since May 30th, so not that long ago. He didn't play the last club match of the season and is an unknown return date. So given the recency of that injury, I think he might be out for the Cup. Okay, and Fabinho not appearing since the World Cup. Before we talk about the position, we'll move on to defensive midfielders. No, wait. I should have talked about the position in general at the beginning. So this position of defensive/central midfielder in the 4-2-3-1, which Brazil favors, remember they use it a little more than half of the time, it is a 2-man position. However, they use the 4-3-3 often enough, about 38% of the time. So we will look at that position separately. So basically in the 4-2-3-1, we'll consider it 2 central and defensive midfielders, but just a 1-man position in the 4-3-3. And we'll look at the right and left midfielder separately. Okay, so we've looked at the defensive midfielders. Let's go on and look at the central midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Bruno Guimaraes, and a possible candidate in Douglas Luiz, and then a seemingly off-the-squad candidate in Gerson. No, he is a possible but unlikely candidate, Gerson. And seemingly off the squad is Arthur Melo. And also Fred, seemingly off the squad. Okay, let's look at the candidates. Bruno Guimaraes is 26 years old and has 20 caps and 1 goal for Brazil since 2020. He plays for Newcastle in England since 2022, Lyon before that. His first tournament was the World Cup, so not selected for the for the Copa America. Instead, he was selected for the Olympic team, which was played the same summer. In 2021. For the World Cup, he was a substitute, but did make the squad there. And now he's a starter. He started 9 of their 11 games since the World Cup, as well as subbing in for 1. So just 1 match. He wasn't selected for probably that Morocco friendly in March. Several of the starters were selected for that one. So Bruno Guimaraes, a definite candidate. And Douglas Luiz, our possible candidate. He's 26 years old and 13 caps for the national team since 2019, so not really getting on the field that much. Douglas Luiz plays for Aston Villa in England since 2019. He was with Manchester City before that, and he was selected for the Copa America 2021. He was a substitute in that tournament. However, Douglas Luiz was not selected for the World Cup in 2022. He returned after a 2-year absence in November 2023 and didn't start any of their remaining 4 games, but he was subbed in for all of them, even the 2 under the new manager. So Douglas Luiz, a possible candidate here. Gerson is possible but unlikely. We won't go into detail on him. He was not selected for the last 4 matches. He plays for Flamengo in Brazil. Arthur Melo has not appeared for the national team since 2022, March of 2022, so off the squad for quite a long time. And he plays for Juventus in Italy, but we won't go into detail on him either. Nor will we on Fred, who has actually been with Brazil for quite a while, 32 caps for them. His first tournament for the in the 2015 Copa America, and he was selected for the World Cup squad. So fairly recent experience with the national team, but hasn't been called up after the 2022 World Cup. Has Fred? He moved from Manchester United to Fenerbahce in 2023. Okay, that is the candidates. And now that we've done defensive and central midfielders, we can talk about the positions. So in the Cup, it was Casemiro and Lucas Paqueta. We're going to talk about Lucas Paqueta as a left midfielder here. But he also played in the World Cup when it was a two-man midfield alongside Casemiro. So they were the central pairing in the World Cup. In the one game where they played a 4-3-3 formation, it was Fred who joined them. And in the B team game, it was Fred alongside Fabinho. But then it went back to Casemiro and Paqueta. The two friendlies after the World Cup, the three friendlies after the World Cup were a 4-3-3 formation. And it was Casemiro as the centre man in the first two, and Guimarães in the last one. We'll talk about the left and right midfielders later. Those two, Casemiro and Guimarães, were a pairing in the first four of the World Cup qualifiers. However, in the last two, Andre came in to replace Casemiro. Under the new manager, we again see a 4-3-3 formation, and Guimarães was the central player. All right, that is the defensive slash central midfielders. And as we said, we're going to separately look at the left and right midfield. Let's talk about the position first. So once again, the 4-3-3 formation is the only one that has this, and Brazil only used it a little more than a third of the time. Specifically, they used it in the three friendlies after the World Cup. But it is significant because the new manager used it in the 2 March 2024 games. So they may be going with that formation. Okay, let's look at the candidates. So here we find Lucas Paqueta, only a possible candidate here. I'm going to read the bio and see if we should move him up. We also have João Gomes as a possible candidate as well. Let's look at Lucas Paqueta. He's 26 years old, 44 caps and 10 goals since 2018, and he plays for West Ham in England since 2022, Lyon in France, and AC Milan in Italy. Before that, his Brazilian club was Flamengo, his youth club and first senior club. Lucas Paqueta has been part of Copa America, part of tournaments since the 2019 Copa America. He was a starter in the World Cup in 2022 and has started 5 of their 11 games since the World Cup. However, he was not selected for 6 matches. That is all of the World Cup qualifying games. He was not selected for any of those. Probably that's why I have him as a possible candidate. However, he has come in under the new manager, making him a little more likely than it seemed during World Cup qualifying games. Secondly, we have newcomer João Gomes, 23 years old, with 2 caps for the national team since 2024. He got both of those appearances as a starter. No, hang on. What am I talking about? He first appeared in March 2023, and he was on the bench for 1 game and not selected for the 8 others. But yes, he did actually start both of the March 2024 games under the new manager. That's why I was confused. Okay, but has been on the team since 2023, but not appearing on the field. João Gomes plays for Wolverhampton in England since 2023 and comes out of the Flamengo youth system, just like Paqueta. Okay, let's summarize the position. So again, we don't see it being used all the time. The one time they used it in the World Cup, it was Paqueta playing it, and he also did in all three friendlies after the Cup. And also, João Gomez was used under the new manager. However, he shifted from left midfielder to right midfielder, and João Gomez played as the left midfielder. Okay, then let's look at the right midfielders, and here we have a possible candidate in Joelinton, and a player, we'll say retired. Really, I got to change that to just absent from the squad or some title like that. Everton Ribeiro last appeared in the 2022 World Cup, but has not been called up since. So let's look at Joelinton. He's 27 years old with just 5 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2023. So a bit of a latecomer to the party. And he plays for Newcastle in England since 2019 and was with Hoffenheim in Germany before that. So he got his first appearance, Joelinton, in June 2023. He started 2 of their remaining 10 games. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1, and then out with 2 separate injuries, including the last 2 matches, but he has recovered from that. We'll see if the new manager is interested in him. He's a possible candidate then, Joelinton, and let's summarize the position. So as we saw in the World Cup, the one time they used a 4-3-3, it was Fred who joined the midfield on the right side. In the friendly against Morocco, it was a player who has only appeared in that game, so we won't even mention his name. But for the 2 June friendlies in June 2023, it was Joelinton in those 2. And then we jump forward to March 2024 for the next time they used this formation under the new manager. And as we saw, Paqueta switched sides to play both games on the right. Okay, now we're going to move upfield to the left attacking position. And we have a definite candidate in Vinicius Jr. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my graphic there. And we have, well, we also have Richarlison coded as a left winger, actually. That coding should probably be changed. Anyway, we've moved him to forward for our discussion here. We have 4 possible candidates: Gabriel Martinelli, Savio, Galeno, and Pepe, all of those possible candidates. And then we have Paulinho as a possible but unlikely candidate. Let's take a look. First of all, we have Vinicius Jr. He's still just 23 years old. He seems older than that to me. He has 28 caps and 3 goals for the national team since 2019, which is probably why he seems a little bit older. Vinicius Jr. plays for Real Madrid in Spain since 2018 and comes out of the Flamengo youth system in Brazil, with them since 5 years of age, actually. Was part of the 2021 Copa America just as a substitute, but a starter in the 2022 World Cup, and has started 8 of their 11 games. The only 3 he missed were due to injury. So Vinicius Jr., a definite candidate. Gabriel Martinelli is 22 years old. He has 9 caps and 1 goal for Brazil since 2022, and he plays for Arsenal in England. And he comes out of a less familiar team for me, Ituano, in Brazil, as his youth and first senior team. Martinelli. He was selected for the World Cup squad in 2022 as a substitute. He did start the B team game there. And over the recent period, he started 2 of their 11 games, subbing in for 1 and on the bench for 1. He was injured for the last 2 games, though, He has recovered from that injury since, but he was not selected for 5 other games. But we'll see under the new manager, because we have several candidates challenging for the position. Uh, the first of them is Savio. He's 20 years old and got his first cap in 2024. He plays, or he's on the roster of Troyes in France since 2022, but has recently been loaned to Manchester City since 2024. So as I said, he got his first appearance in March 2024. Didn't start either of the games, but he got his cap by subbing in for one of them, and he was on the bench for the other. So Savio making a bid. Galeno is the next one, 26 years old, but just 1 cap for Brazil since 2024. He's in his second stint with Porto since 2022, Porto in Portugal, having been with Braga in Portugal before that. And he also got his first appearance in March of 2024. And just like Savio, subbed in for 1 game and on the bench for the one other. So it does look like the manager is considering these players in Martinelli's injury absence. Pepe is the last one, 27 years old. He actually has 1 cap since 2023. So he got his first appearance in November of 2023, but didn't start any of the remaining 4 games. But he too was subbed in for 1, and he was on the bench for the 3 others. So also a consideration under the new manager. So interesting to see what happens. And we do have the warm-up games to provide a hint. Paulinho's our possible but unlikely candidate. He joined the team in November 2023 and was subbed in once and on the bench once, but not selected for the last 2 matches under the new manager. So with all the candidates ahead of him and the manager not selecting him, we think it's unlikely that he will be selected. Let's look at the left attacking position. In summary, so Vinicius Jr. in 4 games of the World Cup, while Gabriel Martinelli was basically his backup, and he played in the B team game there. And yes, mostly Vinicius after that, except for when he was injured. He was injured for the September World Cup qualifiers, and we see Rodrigo, who we're going to see over on the right side, moved over from the right side to step in here. So interesting that it wasn't Martinelli stepping in. However, in November, Martinelli did step into the position. He started both games. Vinicius was only absent for 1 of those games due to injury. The other game he played as a forward in a strange formation in the first November game in 2023. Under the new manager, it is Vinicius starting both. So he's kept a fairly firm grip on the position over here. And let's go over to the right side. We see Rodrigo, who we just mentioned, as a definite candidate, and Rafinha as a likely candidate. We have David Neres as a possible but unlikely candidate, and made even less likely with a muscle injury. I'll talk in detail about it at the end, but an injury that is troubling him. And then seemingly off the squad is Anthony. So let's look at the first candidate, Rodrigo, just 23 years old, but with 22 caps and 5 goals for Brazil since 2019. And he plays for Real Madrid in Spain since 2019. And he comes out of the Santos system in Brazil. And was not selected for the 2021 Copa America, but was for the World Cup in 2022. But just a backup player there. However, since the end of 2022, he has started 10 of their 11 games and on the bench for 1 other. And I'll say here that he kind of moves around in various positions up front. So not all 10 games as a right attacker there. And we'll talk about that when we get to the summary. Let's look at the second candidate, the likely Rafinha. He's 27 years old and 22 caps and 6 goals since 2021. He's with Barcelona in Spain since 2022 and played for Leeds United in England from 2020 to 2022. He's also played in France and Portugal and comes out of the Avaí club in Brazil. Rafinha was selected for the 2022 World Cup. He was a starter there, and he has started 6 of their 11 games since then. He was injured for 2. He hadn't been selected for the first 3 matches, those friendlies in March and June 2023, but has come back into the squad since. Next, we have David Neres. We won't talk much about him because he looks like he's going to be out injured. And he was not selected for the last 2 matches under the new manager and didn't play much before that. Anthony is seemingly off the squad despite having been selected for the World Cup in 2022. He did play after the World Cup, but last appeared in March of 2023. So the Manchester United player doesn't look like he's a real consideration here. Okay, in summary of the position, Rafinha was the starter in 4 games of the World Cup. Anthony playing the B team game there. We saw that Rodrigo was just a substitute there, maybe like a C team player, because the only appearance he got was subbing into the B team game. He did sub into all the other games as well, though. However, after the Cup, it's Rodrigo as the main player, but we will see that he does play quite often in other positions. In fact, we've seen it already when Vinicius was injured and he played on the left side. When he is absent from the right attacking position, Rafinha comes in, so he's the backup here. And that was the case not only when Vinicius was injured, but under the new manager, where Rodrigo played as a centre forward. And Rafinha came in as the right attacker there. So Rodrigo, quite versatile there. And it is the no, it's not the centre forward we're going on to. It's the central attacking position, and I'll talk about the position first. It is used in their favoured 4-2-3-1 formation, so that's about 2/3 of the time. However, this position is not used in the 4-3-3 formation, nor the one time they used a 4-4-2 formation. Okay, that's the position. Let's look at who's in it, and it is none other than Neymar, who is coded as a forward, but we move him here because this is where he has been playing. We put Neymar as a definite candidate despite the injuries he's been struggling with. He's been out with a cruciate ligament tear since October, and he's not expected back until after the Cup. We'll talk more about that in the section 3. Anyway, there's no need to go into detail on why he's a definite candidate. He's the captain of the team, for one thing, and he has 79 goals in 128 caps for another. And he's playing for Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. Was with Paris Saint-Germain for 6 years prior to that, and has been part of many tournaments, but actually has been injured for some, was controversially used for the Olympic team for the 2016, or instead of playing in the 2016 Copa America Centenario. But I could go on. His first tournament was the 2011 Copa America, and yes, more recently he was a starter in the World Cup. He did suffer an ankle injury there, which caused him to miss 2 games. And injury is the concern here, because he started 4 of their 11 games since the World Cup and then was out for ankle injury. Oh no, he wasn't then out for ankle injury. He was out for ankle injury with the first 3. and then suffered another injury, a cruciate ligament injury, and was out for the last 4. So by that counting, we should put him somewhere like a possible candidate because he's been out so much. But we all know that if he's available, he'll be a starter. So Neymar, a definite candidate. And I should have named the other candidates before talking about Neymar, because as a possible candidate, we also have Andreas Pereira and Rafael Veiga. And then seemingly off the squad. Oh, I won't even mention that player because he's been gone for too long. So let's just deal with the 2 possible candidates. It's 28-year-old Andreas Pereira, who only has 3 caps for the national team since 2018. So struggling to get onto the team. Pereira was born in Belgium and plays for Fulham in England since 2022. He was with Manchester United before that in England. And he has played in Brazil. He was loaned to Flamengo by Manchester United there. And he was off the team for 5.5 years. So basically, he got his first cap in a friendly in September 2018, and then just wasn't called up to the team until March 2024 under the new manager. And he didn't start either of the games, but he was subbed in for both. So it looks like a new lifeline for him. Unable to get in under previous managers, despite playing very well in the English league. But now a good chance under the new manager, although he hasn't started any. Rafael Veiga is 29 years old, but only has 6 caps for the national team. He just joined in 2023 and plays for Palmeiras in Brazil. He got his first appearance in March 2023. Didn't start any games, but he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 3. So quite popular under the interim managers, but not selected by the new manager for the last 2 games. Okay, those are our candidates. Let's summarize the position. In the World Cup, they played the 4-2-3-1-3, 4 times. It was Neymar in 3 of the games, and Rodrigo played the B team game. In the other game, the formation wasn't used. Neymar was injured for game 2, actually, and that is possibly, I think that's what precipitated the formation change in game 2 of the World Cup, and then they went back to the 4-2-3-1 when he was back. So anyway, the position is not used in the 4-3-3 formation, so not in the friendlies in January and March 2023. But in the World Cup qualification, they used the position throughout. Neymar filled the position for the first 4 games that he was fit for. In the 5th game, though, he was out injured, and we once again see a formation change when he was absent. So they went with a 4-4-2. It was a disaster, and the 4-4-2 didn't have this position. Rodrigo filled the role, I think, in game 6, and then under the new manager, the position wasn't used. I'm just going to confirm that it was Rodrigo in game 6, and yes, it was. So again, if Neymar is fit, they might go back to the 4-2-3-1, but it looks like he's not going to be. We move on to forwards, and we have first we'll look at the position. So when we the 4-2-3-1, obviously it's a single forward. We also consider it a single forward in the 4-3-3 formation. We think of that as a centre forward flanked by a left attacker and a right attacker. So it was only in one formation, one game, that they used 2 forwards. Otherwise, it's a single man position here. Well, we've moved Neymar, although he is coded as a forward. We've also no, we have Richarlison here then as a likely candidate, and we have Endrick as a likely candidate, and Gabriel Jesus as a possible candidate, and João Pedro excuse me, João Pedro, also a possible candidate. Sorry, my computer got a bit glitchy there. Matthias Cunha as a possible but unlikely candidate. And Pedro as seemingly off the squad. Uh, seemingly off the squad. And yes, that is it. So let's look at the. I'll just say of Pedro right now. He was selected for the World Cup in 2022. He did play after the World Cup, but he last appeared in June of 2023. So it doesn't look like a viable candidate here. Let's look at Richarlison. He also has an injury tag on him. So two big scorers for Brazil under threat here. Richarlison is 27 years old and has 48 caps and an impressive 20 goals for Brazil since 2018. He is a bit more reliable for Brazil than for his club teams in terms of scoring. He plays for Tottenham in England since 2022 and was with Everton before that. And has been part of tournaments since the 2019 World Cup. 2019 Copa America. Was not part of the 2018 World Cup, but was part of the 2022 edition where he was a starter. And he has since started 5 of their 11 games. He subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for the last 2. So the new manager did select him there. But he was also injured for 2 and not selected for 1. That's why we have him as a likely rather than a definite candidate. Okay, Endrick is very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing if he is going to make the squad. It looks likely. He is 17 years old with 4 caps and 2 goals for Brazil. He will be playing for Real Madrid from July 2024, so basically after this cup. And he played for Palmeiras in Brazil prior to that. Part of the Palmeiras youth system. And he got his first appearance for Brazil in November of 2023 and didn't start any games, but he subbed in for all 4 of them and scored 2 goals. So I think Brazilians and I are excited to see Endrick, although, you know, he may not be selected because of his youth, but what a good start for Brazil. Looks like an upcoming star. Gabriel Jesus is 27 years old. He has 64 caps and 18 goals for Brazil since 2016 and plays for Arsenal in England since 2022. Manchester City prior to that for 5 years and a product of the Palmeiras youth system. And that was his first senior club too. He has been part of tournaments since the World Cup in 2018 consistently, but was just a substitute in the 2022 World Cup and has since started 2 of their 11 games, subbed in for 3 and injured for 1, and not selected for 5 matches. That's the first 3, but most significantly the last 2 under the new manager. So he kind of has been drifting off the Brazil team and a little bit the Arsenal, his club team too, where he's getting fewer starts. And so it'll be interesting to see what the new manager thinks, but not being selected for the last 2 matches is kind of a bad sign. The other likely or the other possible candidate is João Pedro. He's 22 years old and has 1 cap since 2023. He plays for Brighton in England since 2023, Watford in England before that. And Pedro got his first appearance in November 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 4 games. He was on the bench for 1. He was injured for the last 2 matches. He has recovered, and it'll be interesting to see if the new manager has interest in him. Matthias Cunha is just a possible but unlikely candidate here, and he has not been selected for the last 4 matches. He's never been selected for a tournament either, and so we'll see. We'll talk more about him if he is selected. Not to be confused with João Pedro is Pedro. Pedro is was selected for the World Cup in 2022, but hasn't been selected since June 2023. So he doesn't look like a candidate here. And that is all the candidates we have. So let's finish by summarizing the position. We have Richarlison in 4 games of the World Cup, while Gabriel Jesus played in the B team game there. After the Cup, it wasn't Jesus, it was Rodrigo. Jesus wasn't selected for the games after the Cup. Rodrigo played that friendly with Morocco in March 2023, and then Richarlison came back and played the 2 in June. Richarlison continued as the lone forward for the first 3 games of World Cup qualifying, but he then lost the start to Gabriel Jesus in game 4. Richarlison had been fit for that game, but he was injured for the November game. So Jesus started the second game there, but the first November game was the 4-4-2 formation, and the manager did a bit of an odd thing there. The regular left attacker and right attacker players, Vinicius and Rodrigo, became a forward pairing, and their backups, Martinelli and Rafinha, played as wingers in the 4-4-2 formation. Richarlison was back for the March 2024 games under the new manager, but he was only on the bench there. Rodrigo started as a single forward in both of those games. So again, we see Rodrigo being in several positions here, now maybe a forward under the new manager. All right, that brings us to the end of part 2, and we move on to part 3. No real closing thoughts on Brazil, other than to say some changes have been made under the new manager. Interestingly, he did use exactly the same players in the same formation for both of the March games, so maybe he's quite firm in the players that he wants. But we really will have to see what the warm-up games offer, because we've only had this manager for the March game, so haven't had a good look at him. Okay, we're going to just turn off for a second here and set up for our race through the list to review of starters. All right, here we are back at the top of the list, and we begin with the manager. So Dorival Jr., we're going to consider him a starter, as it were. He's the not likely to be fired before the tournament. For goalkeepers, we are not sure. We could have the return from injury of Alisson Becker. We probably won't see Edison, who is out with an injury. We'll get to that soon. Or we could have Bento, who came in for the last 2 games under the new manager. So really have no idea what's going to happen there. I'm looking forward to the warm-up games to see who they go with. For central defense, it's kind of the same thing. Marquinhos was out injured, so could come back from injury, but it was Beraldo and Fabricio, possible candidate Fabricio Bruno in the second game. In the 2 March games. So we're really not sure, and Gabriel seems to not be selected under the new manager there. So really unclear in central defense what's going to happen. Over on the left side, we don't have any definite or likely candidates. Wendell seems the most likely candidate. He was used under the new manager, but he's a new player. So not confident enough to really nominate him as a starter. Renan Lodi was not selected under the new manager, so he doesn't look like a strong candidate either. So I think actually I'm going to highlight Wendell in blue, because there doesn't seem to be any real challenge to that. In the right back, the new manager called back Danilo, so I'm going to put him as the as a definite starter there. Not quite as definite as I usually want for a green highlight, but we will go with that. Among the defensive and central midfielders, I'm just looking to see what we had for the new manager. I mean, this is making it difficult because the new manager was only there for 2 games, but I think we can nominate Bruno Guimaraes as a definite candidate because he did start in the middle of a 4-3-3 formation under the new manager for both games. And Lucas Paqueta kind of was the right midfielder, but now is the left midfielder. He didn't play any of the World Cup qualifying games, but seems back in favour under the new manager. So I maybe put him in blue rather than green because I'm not dead sure about it. Didn't really start enough games to be confident that he's a starter. On the right side, it was João Gomez under the new manager, but again, a bit of uncertainty here. We don't really have a lot of candidates, but then we're not dead sure that the manager's going to go with the 4-3-3 that he went with in the Cup. So yes, that's making it kind of difficult to predict. However, left attacker Junior Vinicius looks like a definite starter, and Gabriel Martinelli looks like his definite backup. So I think we can be confident in saying that. And on the right side, it looks like Rafinha is the definite backup and Rodrigo the definite starter, although we have seen him kind of start all over the front of the field. In fact, under the new manager, Rodrigo started as the centre forward. But we think he will definitely be a starter. And Rafinha, also a good chance of being a starter. But a lot comes down to injuries because both Neymar and Richarlison are injured. If they come back, they'll probably be starters, but it doesn't look like they're going to come back. So we're going to leave Neymar unhighlighted. On the front line too, Richarlison probably would be at least a blue highlight, a likely starter, although he has kind of dropped off both for his club and country. But it's injury for Brazil. And yes, I can see why the manager went with Rodrigo there, because they don't look like any starters there. However, I kind of have the feeling they're going to bring the very young Endrick to the Cup, and who knows, I think he'll start as a substitute, but maybe he'll become the starting forward. But we can't highlight anyone here because there's just not enough certainty. Let's move on to a review of injuries, and we begin with the biggest ones. Neymar out with a cruciate ligament injury since October 2023. Is that right? And not expected back until July 16th. So I don't know whether they'll bring him and hope that he can be recovered for the after the group stage. But who knows what they'll do about that. That's a big loss for them. Richarlison too, out with a hamstring injury since mid-May, also not expected back until July 16th. So looks like they're going to be out of contention. I'm going to put them out of contention here. I don't think they'll be selected with that late a return date. We have Ederson, goalkeeper Ederson. We had him as a likely candidate, just like Richarlison. We had Neymar as a definite if he was fit. Ederson is out with a fractured eyebrow. He was out for the last game of the club season and has an unknown return date. That sounds fairly serious. Ederson more of a backup keeper there, so not as big a loss as Neymar for sure. We have Andre, also we considered a likely candidate. He's out with a knee injury since late April and an unknown return date. And then the two other candidates were just at the possible level and possible but unlikely. It is Pablo Maya. He's out with an injury since May 30th. He didn't play his last club match of the season and has an unknown return date. That's a muscle injury there. And also a muscle injury is the possible but unlikely right winger, David Neres, out with that injury since mid-May, not playing the last club match of the season, and an unknown return date for him also. Whoops, I put the wrong information in the graphic there. David Neres, there we go. Okay, well, that brings us to the end. We're just going to preview part 2 as we go here. So we have, we're going to really just look at the list and see who made it and who didn't. Any notable non-selections, that would be likely or definite candidates who we thought were going to make it, who weren't selected, and some surprise inclusions, including any new players. And we are expecting these categories to be quite full because the new manager has already brought in some new players and left off some experienced players for the team. So looks like he's going to make some changes. We'll also give an update on injuries. Although I'm not sure there'll be much change to what we already covered in this media cast. And that brings us to the end. So we will see you in part 2. We would like to thank Paul Udin and Pixabay for the wonderful background music accompanying this media cast. The piece is called Victory Epic Music.